Wow, a few people. Well, I can also talk about membership later, a little bit. We started in 1874. It was Lambs that started the Actors Fund. Is anybody a member here of Equity? Yeah. Quite a few of you. Lambs started Equity. Anybody a member of SAG-AFTRA? Lambs started SAG-AFTRA. Any ASCAP members? Started by the Lambs. Basically, any organization that collects money for people in show business, the Lambs had a hand in that. We are coming on our 150th anniversary, our Sesquicentennial, which is a really good word for you Scrabble players, in 2024. But we're really excited to have you guys come tonight. We have a few things coming up. Magda, when is our event with Brenda Vaccaro? That is
November 8th.
November 8th, and Brenda is here tonight. So please come back on November 8th. We're working on another few more events. Our Low Jinx is on October 27th. Come for that. That's our Halloween party. We'll have some cabaret singing on floor 2M. But tonight is, thanks to Magda, who is our indefatigable entertainment committee member, it's the beginning of our award winners series. And we could not begin with a more distinguished guest tonight. But the first person I want to bring up is our moderator for tonight. He's a professor of film at Brooklyn College. He's written numerous books about film and theater and show business. Please welcome Mr. Foster Hirsch.
Awesome.
Our next guest is someone who I haven't seen in a few years. Last time I saw him, we were having cocktails at the Algonquin Hotel. He's been involved with the Piccadilly Theater for 20 years?
25.
25, a quarter century. Please welcome Dan Weinberger. And our guest of honor with a 65-year career, a stage and screen, on a multiple award winner. Please welcome Hal Linden. Stick around after the event. We're going to go down to floor 2M for dinner and cocktails. For those who don't remember, they'll be happy to take your credit cards. And Foster's also going to allow time for Q&A as well, too. Okay, so please have some good questions for him. But welcome, everybody.
Welcome. We're here tonight to talk about a play and production I had the pleasure of seeing about 2 weeks ago. A play with, to me, a wonderfully enticing title, Two Jews Talking. I love the title. I'd go to see anything with that title. And we have the director who chose the material, I believe, Dan Wackerman, and the star of the show with timing you are born with and cannot be taught, Mr. Howard. I want to ask you, Dan, we just talked briefly back there, but I really want to hear about it. It's the kind of show, two men on stage talking. You have two actors who have masterful timing. You have a beautifully written script. What the heck does the director do?
Not only that, they don't move. They don't move, they just sit and talk.
And yet the piece is clearly directed, though you wouldn't, it doesn't feel like it. Tell us your process, Dan.
It's all true. I mean, Hal and Bernie Capel come out, sit down, and talk. And that's it in the way of blocking. So easy enough. But there are still substantial characters here, characters that they're playing, characters that need to be developed and explored. Now, in terms of the timing you talk about, that's something that can't be directed. I mean, directors can nudge, faster, slower, but the real heart of comic timing is not something that can be directed or taught. Some amazing actors just have it in their bones. And here's one, Bernie Capel is another, and to watch them trade insults and do what they do for 75 minutes in this play, it's really been a wonder for me to see it in person.
You explored character and script with the actors, is that right?
You hold it, Hal. I can project. What's the question?
You explored character and background with the actors.
Sure we did.
That was your
We
contribution.
approached this
Yes.
as if we're doing a serious play. Seriously. Every moment was investigated, where it came from, where it went to, so that the characters were developed, the relationship was developed, and then the timing was added to make the comedy work.
That came third, the timing?
In a sense, yes.
In a sense, last.
Yes.
In a sense, last.
Well, it deepens, it grows, it becomes more subtle, it becomes more faceted. I mean, that's one of the things I've noticed over the last 2 months of watching this show, is how Hal and Bernie developed that timing. It really, sometimes it's just a matter of a second, and you wouldn't believe the difference that makes. It's quite remarkable.
Does it change performance to performance in subtle ways?
Well, in a sense, every performance is different. And anything can affect it. Audience can affect it. Your blood pressure can affect it. So, in that sense, yes, it changes. But we know when we start on a beat how to. Or we've discovered, let's put it that way, what works best.
But it doesn't feel mechanical.
And that's because of the work we did in the beginning. The question was to make it organic and not mechanical.
Because you know who you're playing.
Because you know who you're playing and you know why you know. All the Stanislavski answers are there, so you can now play George Abbott, you know.
So, but you're doing George Abbott, but it has the subtext. I have to tell you, the night I saw the audience, full house, laughing. By the end, you're very moved, and the elderly gentleman seated next to me was in tears at the end of the show, and he was really sobbing.
Yes,
So I
we
said,
were trying to make him laugh. That was
I said, sir, may I help you up the stairs? Because I thought he was so overcome that I thought he was an elderly gentleman, and I thought he might need some assistance. But you're very skillful, and you're sneakers. You sneak because it catches up with us. We don't expect it, and by the end, you're really moved.
I have to credit Ed Weinberger for that. Ed created a relationship between two people that's comedic, and yet we don't realize that it's also human and quite touching, and their backstories coincide at the end to make the moment.
And I have to say, was it a director's choice or your choice when you put your arm around your co-player?
No, that was Ed, wasn't it?
I thought it was you.
No, it was Ed. Remember, I was fighting it. In the beginning.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Yes.
But I'm giving it away, but that is incredibly moving.
That was Ed. Ed was adamant. Ed was adamant that I had to find a way to get to the point to put my arm around him.
Now, the writer of the show, Ed Weinberger, I gather is primarily a TV writer. And
I spoke to Ed today. Interestingly enough, he said that his ambition as a young man was to be a playwright. And he found his way toward being a playwright by being first a comedy writer. He wrote jokes for people, and then for being a pretty elite television writer. He wrote for Taxi and he wrote for Mary Tyler Moore, famously. And stuff that's, a lot of the really memorable episodes of those shows was Ed Weinberger. This is his, he said he was quite kind of touched
Well,
that he got to
I have to tell my Ed Weinberger story. So this is a man with 9 Emmy Awards. He helped create the Mary Tyler Moore Show, as Hal says, the Taxi, the Cosby Show. I mean, he has an illustrious career as a TV writer. But he began with the desire to be a playwright and be taken seriously as a playwright. So when he flew to New York for this production, he checked into the Algonquin Hotel, which I thought was appropriate. And he was in the lobby of the Algonquin the day the New Yorker Review appeared. And he picked up a copy of the magazine and he said, he sobbed out loud. He was so thrilled with the review. So dreams come true.
But writing for television is not the same thing as writing a play.
Not at all.
Well, it's a different version of it, let's put it
Well,
that way.
yeah.
You have to have characters, you have to have backgrounds, you have to have through lines, you have to have spines, you have to have actions and objectives. It's still human beings interacting.
But it is, you could tell that it's written by somebody who has a lot of experience with one-liners.
Oh.
Because there are great one-liners, but the one-liners add to the character. They aren't just jokes that end in themselves. It's related to character and situation, but there are one-liners. Can you share with us the opening line of the play? Or maybe not.
I don't.
Okay, keep it a secret.
I know, I remember the line, I don't think it represents
Okay.
the play.
No, but I thought, oh, this is clever. This
Well-
is clever. I laughed out loud. First line of the play.
Well, that's good, but I don't think it describes the play
No,
particularly.
it doesn't. Ed, did you, Dan?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, though. When I first read this script, the title kind of turned me off. I said, why are we limiting our audience? Why is this, that's so limited? Two Jews talking, you know, you're going to run out of people as soon as the theater parties are done. But that's what it is. It's the most descriptive title.
Oh, yes, I love the title.
It is
actually.
what it is.
And our audience is remarkably diverse.
I know, it's amazing. One of the few places that we ever did it before we got to New York, the only place, as a matter of fact, that I ever did it, was a prior engagement they had in North Carolina, Western North Carolina. And I don't think there was a Jew in miles. But the humor is, you know, universal.
Universal, it is.
If it's not universal,
Dan, how did the play get to you? Did you choose it? Did you know Ed? How did it find its way to Peccadillo?
We've known Ed, the company's known Ed for about 10 years. We were in negotiation to do another Ed Weinberger play many years ago now, and we were going to do it with Ed Asner, whose health was not great at the time. And so ultimately that project never came to be. But then he brought me this script, and Peccadillo had produced in March of 2020, we did the New York City premiere of Sideways, the adaptation by the author of the movie Sideways. And then just a year ago, that was closed by COVID in 2020. And then just a year ago, we did a great American play from the 30s called Mornings at 7. And that was closed by Omicron. And so I thought, I can't go through this the third time. We need to go in a totally different direction. And so this is actually not a Peccadillo production. This is a commercial production that I've been asked to direct. And it's been a great success. And so far, at least, COVID hasn't stopped us.
Hal is ending, Hal and Bernie are ending this weekend. So be sure to get there.
Actually, Bernie ended last weekend. And the reason is this came up quite late. Didn't happen until the spring or till
Even early June.
June before they actually decided to do it. And by that time, both of us had prior commitments, so this is as long as I can be.
So you're playing it this weekend with another actor?
I'm playing it this weekend with our understudy, who actually played my son in The Rothschilds. Timmy Jerome. Timmy Jerome. We played, during the run, 2 different sons in The Rothschilds. And we've been father and son friends ever since.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Is it a different show with him than it was?
I'm
with
sure it
Bernie?
will be. I'm sure it will be.
You've been rehearsing with him?
We did it for a few times.
Oh, yeah.
You've done it already?
Bernie
Yes.
actually tested positive for COVID
Yes.
sometime during this
This
run,
run.
so he had to drop out for a few days, and Tim stepped in.
So Tim's done it, we've done it. It'll be different timing. It'll
Yes.
be different timing.
Different time. Now, Hal, I have to ask you, you're honest about your age, right?
You can't lie about your age.
But this, the
Google
gentleman,
you.
this gentleman has pages and pages and pages of dialogue. Were you daunted when you saw the script?
Again, this was originally written for Ed Asner. And Ed, again, was not well, which is one of the reasons the 2 characters are stationary. And Ed would, actually, the minute he said a 2-hander to me on the telephone, I said, I don't know, that's a little much. But we get help, so we've managed to surmount that problem. Let's put it that way.
When you have, your performance schedule is Thursday through Sunday?
Yes.
So
No, Friday.
Friday. So
Full performance.
between the Sunday and the Friday performances, don't you have to then revisit the play before the Friday night?
No, we do a run through on Friday afternoon.
We brush up.
We brush up. Our Shakespeare.
I would see all those lines and I'd say, oh boy, I keep those in memory and not feel as if I'm struggling to retain them. And of course you don't, it just comes out.
And I think of all of those funny lines right then and there. You know? Somebody wrote it. Don't forget that.
What's interesting about the play is it's 2 characters sitting, but we haven't told the audience that it's in 2 different time frames, which gives it a completely different spin.
Right.
It adds to the meaning of it.
The first time
act
frame is during the 40-year march through Sinai after the Red Sea parting. So it's two Jews on the march to the Promised Land. And the second, basically, is, well, not the same 2 Jews, but similar attitudes.
Yes,
Let's put it that way. Similar attitudes in current.
And both pieces take up big questions about the meaning of life and life after death and what's it all about.
Faith and versus skepticism and friendship.
Yes.
I think friendship is the
Yes.
what makes people friends.
And a litany of Jewish complaints.
Ed knows all the jokes about Jewish complaints. Yeah.
I think all of us Jews do. Something very easy to identify with. Dan, did you think that in today's current theater, the title of the show is at all provocative?
No. No. It's funny, I suppose given how volatile the culture is right now around issues of identity, maybe I should have thought more about that. But given the fact that there is no theater in this city without Jews, it just seemed like a natural fit to me.
Is an old Jewish audience coming to the show?
No, it's quite diverse.
It's diverse. I mean, yes, there is a heavy percentage of
Old-time Jewish theater.
old-time Jewish theater goers, bless every one of them. But then all the younger audiences, I mean, I've been surprised to see teenagers, even kids at the show. So I think the parents are bringing them.
Good, good. But you hadn't thought of that question, though you're aware of sensitive issues that we're dealing with at the
Maybe I
moment.
should have.
You shouldn't. That might have stopped you, though.
Right.
I want to go back out to the beginning of your career. This distinguished gentleman who's had a long and wonderful career.
As long, excuse me, as longer than 65 years. Because, well, I'll tell you why. That's my theatrical career. I was a professional musician for about 8-10 years before I ever set foot on the stage. So I became a member of Local 802, the Musicians Union, in 1946. You count how many years that is.
But you sort of started at the top. You were with Judy Holliday and Bells Are Ringing. Pretty good.
The prototypical understudy goes on. You'll go out and what is it? Go out and an understudy, come back a star. It took a few years to make a stardom, but
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What was it like working with Judy Holliday?
Yes.
the most generous actress I've ever worked with. And by that I mean, here's the picture. I joined the show on a Monday with a stage manager and a book, and he walked me through the staging, and on Saturday morning, the following Saturday morning, was first understudy rehearsal, all the understudies in the cast, and halfway through it, he said, "Keep rehearsing, kid, because you're on today." So I made my Broadway debut. I had never set foot on a Broadway stage. I didn't even have an agent. This was, I lucked into the job. Never had rehearsed with Judy, nothing, and then there it was. I was on stage with Judy Holliday. Now, this is Judy Holliday. The song "Just in Time" comes from Bells Are Ringing, and it's done in one, which means there's a curtain right behind you. You only have that much stage, and we were on our way to a party. And there's some dialogue before the scene, and then I take her in my arms and dance with her and sing in her ear, "Just in time, I found her just in time." Well, I took her in my arms and I started dancing across the stage. Just in time, I found her just in time. Got about 4 bars in, and a hand on my back is twisting me. I finally realized I was singing "Into the Wings" because I was just dancing with her, and she twisted me so that she was upstaging herself. You would see her back, and I would be singing out to the
No microphones in those days.
No microphones in those days. I think there was some on the floor. Not too many people have upstaged themselves for my benefit since.
That's not a Merman story.
And after a while, as I watched her, because I was just the standby, the understudy. I wasn't even a standby, I was the understudy. I was slated to go into the chorus. I never got into the chorus. They made me the standby. And I watched her on the stage, and she played half the show with her back to the audience. Because the center of the scene was somebody else. Not too many people I've worked with since then have that devotion to theater, devotion to the craft, what do you call it?
Generosity.
Generosity.
I believe, didn't she win the Tony Award in the same year of Julie Andrews and My Fair Lady? Any theater historians?
I can't, I don't know. Somebody Google it.
I think I'm right. I hope I'm right. Did you stay with the show for the?
Well, as I say, I became the standby. But then, again, I'm sure it was Judy Holliday, I acceded to the role. This was absolutely unheard of in 1959, 58.
56, 57.
Well, 57 is when I joined it, but I got the part. 58 or 59, I don't recall. It was unheard of for an understudy to accede to the role. And I guess Judy said, no, I want him, and that was it. And she did. That started my career, basically.
When now you're performing your show and you give everything, every performance. She was a huge star. Did she give everything she had at every performance?
I never saw a dog it, which I cannot say about every Broadway star. I've seen, unfortunately, major stars walk it.
She never did that.
Never.
Now that we have you here, we can't.
I
have
saw
Hal Linden.
Gypsy, the original company of Gypsy. I raced home from the road to see it. I loved the score, and Merman walked it. Oh God, what a disappointment.
She walked through it.
Walked. It was a matinee. Probably said
We can't have you here and not ask Hal Linden about Barney Miller, which I suppose is the signature role of your career. It was enormously successful. After all these years, it had many years run. Do you ask yourself, or are you asked in interviews, why did that show land the way that it did? Why did it connect to people in the way that it did?
It was described by Joe Wombo, police writer, policeman, as the most realistic cop show on television. Not only the best, but most realistic. And if you ask a detective, how many times in your life have you fired your weapon in anger? That is, not in the shooting range, but out in the street. So how many times have you fired your weapon? The highest number I ever got was 2. Mostly either 1 or never. And most cop shows that you see are adventure shows, and they're constantly running down an alley shooting their weapons. So that they're not an accurate representation of police work. This show was, because we had in the beginning we had a guy there to say, no, that's not the way it works, you do it this way. You know, we had a former policeman who would tell us to make it accurate. But I think the reason that it resonated, good writing. Good writing.
And good acting.
Good acting, there were a lot of shows with good actors. There were some tremendous actors out there doing, whatever they can. But if you don't have good writing, you're really struggling.
Didn't you tell me that you never had a laugh line?
I am honored, with my comedic timing and teachers talking 8 years without a punchline. 8 years without a punchline. I was the straight man. You watched Barney Miller. I never. All I did was react. I reacted pretty good. writing.
Which do you...
We didn't, there was no ad-libbing, there was no, and we had Ronnie Carey, Steve Landisberg, real good stand-up comics who would come up with, shtick. And most, we would say, hey, listen, we found this in rehearsal, and Danny Arnold, who was the producer, would go, would you go to a, this was his bottom line. He said, would you go to a police officer for help who behaved like that? We had to retain our credentials as functioning police officers, and that limited our behavior, and and kept us. So there was no ad-libbing. This was a written show by an incredible staff, and by the way, it was never canceled. It was retired, and it was retired because of the nature of television writers. Whenever you have a hit show, every show has about 5 or 6 writing, either a team or an individual sources. And as soon as you're a hit show, the number 2 guy, his agent is out there trying to get him to be the number 1 guy somewhere. And that's where the networks look. They look for the writers of successful TV shows. So you're constantly losing number 2 and number 3. So everybody moves up, and you've got to find 2 new guys who are pairs at the end. By the time we were up to the 8th season, that we were, just ran out of writers. And the producer said, I am going to open up submissions from writers. He took scripts from college kids who wanted to be writers. He says, I'm going to spend the next month just reading scripts. If I could find a staff for next year, we'll go on. And a month later, he came back and he said, guys, we don't want to just keep repeating ourselves. Everything I'm getting is just another version of what we already did. And he told the network, that's it, we're not going to do anymore, that's enough.
Was that the right decision?
No, artistically or financially?
You've answered the question.
We were all disappointed because we were, if you're on 8 years, your salary's gotten to a nice point. And you'd love to do it another year.
Can you tell us which medium you prefer? Or do you prefer one, TV over theater?
I was just telling you, that is probably the most asked question. Television, theater, movies, or concerts. I've been doing concerts for, 50 years now. I used to say all of the above. And it was true. But now I say my favorite, rehearsal. I'm serious. Acting is basically an executive art form. You execute other people's creativity. There's a guy who tells you what to say, the writer. There's a guy who tells you how to say it, the director. There's even a guy who tells you where to say it, the lighting director, or the choreographer. So really, once you're up and running, it's execution. It's execution. One time when creativity sneaks in is the rehearsal period, because they're open. We're looking, we're trying. How about this? What if my attitude is this instead of that?
Except I would say that the theater, regardless of what you hear today and how people theorize about it, some people, I still think it's overwhelmingly an actor's medium.
Oh, well, once we get on the stage, you have no...
Bad acting can kill Shakespeare.
Oh,
Good acting can elevate the third-rate script. and make it into something special.
Oh, okay, I'll take that.
But I think you like the live audience and the immediate reaction to what you're doing.
You know, that's where we all started. That's where we started. I had to start at the top, playing the lead in a Broadway musical. But no, that's not true. I did summer stock before that, before I got, you know, a little experience. There is something to be said. One of the things is the time element. You do have time to rehearse. Actors are either result-oriented or process-oriented. The default situation is result-oriented. That's how we grow up. We watch people be funny or be sad, and we just emulate what they do. So we start result-oriented. The minute you start studying and understanding how you gotta, you know, dig underneath and create a real human being. So most of us end up kind of process-oriented, but the results are there in the head, whether you like it or not. You know? What was the question?
My theory is you enjoy the live audience.
My point is, when you do television or films, unless you're the star, you're in for a day or two or a week, and there's no rehearsal period. There's only a staging period. Stand here, say the line here. So you really almost have to be result-oriented. Mm-hmm. That takes half the fun away.
Mm-hmm. But is the process of repeating a performance, keeping it fresh, isn't that a challenge for the theater actor?
Yes, that's a challenge. But then again, there's always, again, as I say, your blood pressure is different, your sugar level is different, the weather is different.
The audience.
The audience is definitely different.
Can you feel that right away? The temperature of the house?
More or less. More or less. That does not mean, by the way, that if an audience is not vocal with their laughter or applause, that they're not caught up and enjoying it.
But don't you have an ear for what's going on in the house? Actors
you have an
develop
ear,
that sense.
But it's hard to hear people paying attention.
You can hear it.
But I mean, you can tell,
Yeah.
you can tell when a play is working, but let me put it this way: after all these years, I'm not reaction oriented. I'm oriented in my work. The audience is not laughing or not applauding or not, still do the play and find the moments.
We've had quiet houses.
But they come
And
out.
then at the end, they all
They're
rise
all-
to their feet and
Yeah,
just
so-
hugely enthusiastic.
It's
And then audiences who laugh when he takes his pillow out of the bag and laugh at the pillow. Thinking, wow.
this bill.
Dan, you're working with new actors now because Hal has to leave. So you have a new company coming in next week,
A week from this
a
week.
week from this
Yes.
weekend.
Yep.
Can you tell us who they are?
Yeah, it was announced today.
Yes.
Josh Mostel,
Oh.
Zero Sum, and Richard Masser, who you may know from television and the current series Younger.
Yes. So are they different from your original fellows?
Like night and day.
Always going to be.
Yeah.
I think that's the joy of theater is.
Yeah, and you've got to fit the role to the actor. And it's a mistake to, say, well, this is the line reading that Hal gave. I want you to give the same line. You can't do that.
No. You have to work with the actor.
You've got to lead. You've got to lead them. Because I do know what works and what doesn't work after 2 months of living with this piece. But leading them and nudging them and coaching them to go one way is very different than saying, this is the way it's got to be done.
And you're never going to say, we got a great laugh on this slide.
Oh, no.
This is how you're going to get a laugh.
No.
Wrong.
We don't talk about laughs.
Let me tell you something. I can't tell you how many times, in how many shows, I went to Philadelphia, or Detroit, or New Haven even, with a straight line punchline. And the audience laughed at the straight line. All these geniuses who wrote it, directed it, and produced it, and acted it, didn't see it coming. How many times has that happened to you?
Does the audience tell you if a show is working or not?
Sometimes. I'll give you, I was in Subways Are for Sleeping, Standing By. That was in the bad old days. That show had 4 showstoppers every night. You know how hard it is to stop a show? I've never done it. I've come close. Of course, when you come close, you don't stop it. You just stand down. It's hard. 4 showstoppers every night, and when the audience walked out, it was, nah. So, sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't.
4 showstoppers, but you're saying it was not a great show.
No, it was not a great show. No, it lacked, I guess, I don't know, an attitude. Maybe it was missing, I don't know.
What was a great show was the Rothschilds and Hal
Excuse
Linden
me.
got the
Excuse me. Rothschilds did not pay its backers. Before you say use the word great.
It was great from an audience point of view. I saw it and liked it.
Probably, or possibly, one of the best scores ever written. Unfortunately, a book frailty that was never solved. If you want, I'll tell you what it was. The Rothschilds was a metaphor. It was in 1970, 71? 71. A metaphor for the civil rights movement, basically. It was about an oppressed people who had to deal with the establishment. And 2 generations that dealt differently with it. I was the first generation, and my 5 children were the second generation. Reed, Thurgood Marshall, Walter White in the first generation, Malcolm X in the second generation. And that's a great literary concept. Turned out to be a pretty terrible dramatic concept. Because what you had was the first act where people invested their interest in a character, and then all of a sudden, in the second act, they had 5 other people to latch onto. Doesn't work. So, and that was a problem that probably could not be fixed. It was just too generic to the script. And
But they kept bringing you back.
that's what they tried to do. They just made me, and in the original script, I died at the first act curtain. They moved that funeral, I got about 2/3 of the way into the second act. Just trying to, I actually attended a conference 7 years after my physical death. That is, the character was, that Maya was dead when that happened. But in order to try to keep the audience attached, they tried that, but it was just too fundamental a problem.
But you did win the Tony Award.
Well, excuse me, I've made quite a career. I'm thrilled with the career I had. Do you know how many successes I've been in? Let me put it this way. I have never attended an opening night party, meaning I was in the original cast. I never attended an opening night party to good reviews. Never, including the Rothschilds. So I've survived. A lot of plays didn't. I could have my own wall from
Sardi's? Oh, no, Joe Allen.
from Joe Allen's. I could have my own wall from Joe Allen's
On the flop.
on the flops that I've been in.
But I think, if you'll permit me, that posterity regards the Rothschilds as a sort of prestigious success. Its reputation is better than you're suggesting.
Even with that problem,
Even with that problem.
it was certainly meaningful theater, brilliant music, brilliant lyrics.
Go to YouTube, watch them on YouTube in the Rothschilds. That was-
Dan, you say this is not a Peccadillo production, but I'm a great fan of Peccadillo, and I do want to salute you, for I saw 4 times
I know
your
you-
production
I
of
know you did.
Mornings at 7. I loved that production. It was so honest, it was so pure, and you didn't compromise. Beautifully cast.
What a company, huh?
Beautifully cast. And it didn't survive the Omicron, but it was beautifully done. And I think, isn't the mission of Peccadillo to sometimes discover American plays that haven't been given a lot of attention and
Yes.
they're ready for rediscovery?
Yeah, now that had not been done in New York in 20 years, not since the Lincoln Center production around 2000. So I would not say we discovered Mornings at 7. That's more or less a rock solid classic. But there are many plays that we've done that you could say were rediscovered by the company.
Is there a
The
mission?
function of off-Broadway?
I would think.
Does Peccadillo have a mission of a kind?
That is its mission.
That is its mission.
To rediscover classic American theater and keep it alive in this city.
Great. And you're now at St. Clements
Oh, we've been there since '08.
every season.
Yeah.
What's next? What's next for Peccadillo?
Well, we may be going outside our mission for the first time in 25 years, because there's an English play called The Browning Version by Terence Rattigan that is an absolutely superb piece of work. Now, I know Americans don't know Terence Rattigan very well. He was among that generation of playwrights between the war. Noel Coward, J.D. Priestley, and Terence Rattigan. They dominated the English stage between the First World War and the Second World War. They were just masters of a certain kind of drawing room wit and banter. And this Rattigan play is sort of the flip side of Goodbye, Mr. Chips. It's about a hated public school professor. And his wife is cheating on him, his students hate him, and he's being put out to pasture. So it's not a happy story, but it's very much about a certain kind of sexual repression. By our lights in 2022, he's probably a repressed homosexual, which is why his wife is so unhappy and is seeking comfort with another man. And there's a turn at the end of the play, which I won't give away, but it's a great, great piece of writing.
And it may well be your next production.
I'm hoping.
I'll be there.
Am I too old for the part?
And Hal, where are you off to? You're leaving early to do what?
After that, I actually am heading for Kansas City, where I've appeared twice before, so I'm kind of like the visiting celebrity. And I'm doing a Neil Simon play. Doing Come Blow Your Horn.
wow.
The original role was played by Lou Jacoby. And I've now exceeded to that age. Actually, I'm much older, way too old for the part, but Kansas City, they accept me.
Are you doing it with Sally Struthers?
Yes, Sally's playing my wife.
I interviewed her in Dallas, and she said,
Darling,
wonderful, wonderful, and a terrific comic performer.
Yes. yes. I just did a musical with her about a year ago. A musical version of Grumpy Old Men, which we did up in Algonquin in LA.
Sorry we're losing you in New York, but Kansas City will be happy to have you. Do we have some questions for our wonderful guests?
So did you follow Sidney Chaplin when you did it?
Yes.
Was there mishigas between Judy and Sidney Chaplin that caused him to leave? Or?
You want the
little gossip.
little gossip?
Gossip.
They were involved, yes, yes, and like any relationship, if it was good, it was bad. When it was bad, I was on. Yeah.
Had you seen Sidney Chaplin perform the role?
Yes, yes. Before the role, I don't think so. I think that was the first time I met Sidney. But Sidney was probably the most charming man I ever met. He could sway anybody. You know, he was just charming, absolutely charming. Saw him in Goodbye Charlie, was that? Yes. He was brilliant in Goodbye Charlie, and I did that in summer stock and had a hard time being as charming. I don't know, I could never find it. I also knew Sidney many years later when he had a supper club in Palm Springs called Chapman's, where I used to sit in very often.
He had a prominent Broadway career.
Yeah,
for a while. He was.
I also ended up on at least one weekend in Philadelphia for Funny Girl when Streisand was doing with Sidney. I think, well, I don't more gossip.
Any other questions? Yes.
So, hi. So I don't know if this is a happy question or not a happy question, but I've always really loved the play Sign in Sidney Brewstein's Window. And it just breaks my heart that that play hasn't had the life that I believe that it deserves. And I can't believe, first of all, you must have been amazing, right, in that role. And what happened in that second incarnation?
That was, first of all, it was a musical version of
Oh, it
Sign in
was.
Sidney
Okay.
Brewsting. Now, that may have been the difference, I don't know. It was also a very underfunded production. I went into it, I think the day after we closed the Rothschilds, and we never left town. We just rehearsed for 4 weeks and opened up, and it closed in time for me to do the road company of the Rothschilds.
Five performances.
Yeah,
Wow.
5 weeks, is it?
5 performances
That's
after,
it?
after previews.
After previews.
Yeah, so I just looked it up.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Sorry about that.
it was actually very interesting. It had a kind of a Greek chorus, commenting chorus and I had a great time doing it. I thought it was kind of a wonderful. But then again, my history is the role. If the role is some journey that I want to go on, which is why I had all those flops. Because the roles were wonderful, but the play either didn't hold up, or in this case, I just think they didn't have the money to keep it going. It could have been
You know the play's being revived this season.
It is.
Theater for a New Audience is doing it this season.
You're right, it is. I saw it on the roster. Yes.
And you're right, that was wonderful.
I know, I can see you right now.
Working with Alan Schneider, director. Yes.
What instrument do you play? What instrument do you play? What did you make a living playing? What instrument?
I was a legitimate clarinet player. If I had the slightest bit of discipline in my life, I probably would have spent my life in the first chair of a major symphony orchestra. Very good. Legitimate clarinet player. At the age of puberty, I discovered that more girls went to dances than went to concerts, so I took up the saxophone. And that's why I became the boy singer. So you could stand at the microphone and check out. Yes. My career, totally hormone driven.
Question.
Did you ever work with Judy Garland?
Who?
Judy Garland?
No. No.
No?
I was around, I saw the concert at Palace, the famous.
Yeah.
That was something.
Yeah.
That was something.
Okay, I think we'll end it now, but I have to tell you folks, you have 5 more chances. 4 only?
Friday to Saturday, Sunday.
Only 4 performances a week at St. Clement's Church to see a masterful performance. Wonderful timing, but you're never aware of the timing. It's so natural and organic. Beautifully directed by Dan Wackerman and 2 Jews, talking. I love the title. Please thank Dan Wackerman and Hal Linden.